So it's quite funny because in a way, it's not funny really, but I'm a refugee in this country. I'm here, so fortunate to be in this beloved country. In South Africa, there was, people probably don't even know these days what apartheid means, but it means separation of black and white. Every male in South Africa, when you left school, was conscripted into army. Conscription means enforcement of joining the military. The camp that I was in was Ladysmith, between Durban and Johannesburg, which was five-side Ladysmith. A very heavy camp, trained by the SAS and paratroopers. And our main cause was to protect the regime of South African apartheid. The regime at the time was really trying to focus on keeping that strength of apartheid, and it was the other way that was going. So I was forced unconditionally into something I didn't believe. My call-up in June was 2 years intake. Our training was seriously brutal. We were trained to kill as fast as we could. We were using the highest powered rifles, higher than what the Vietnam boys were using in Vietnam. We were fighting against people that we didn't even know. Southwest African People's Organization, SWAPO terrorists, we were told. We didn't know who they were. You either go to Mozambique, Kruger National Park, to protect the border on the east side, or you went to Angola. Angola was death because there was so much stuff that was going on there, people getting killed. And a lot of it was own mistakes, guys killing their own selves. You know, you get all instructions and training in whatever you're doing, but when it comes to the fore, when you have a contact, when you get ambushed or whatever, it could be night time when the flares go up, it's brighter than day, and all your training goes out. You are thinking about yourselves. You've got your biggest buddies around you, but it's about you want to live to go back to your family and your girlfriend or whatever. And we'd done a month stint in the bush, and we lost 3 guys in 2 days. One of them I was close to. And we got back to camp, talked about tenure, skin was just dropping off the bottom of our feet, we were rotting. We had paramedics, doctors, the whole lot, 1,000 guys, a whole battalion, and it was just terrible. The smell of rotting flesh was just insane. Yeah, some of the guys that were on light duty were allowed to go back to their bungalows. They were reading their mail after a month, and there was a big bang that went off. The guy shot his face off, got a letter from his girlfriend breaking up, and that was one of the things. We were away for so long from our loved ones that, it was the most hardest thing to receive a letter from a girlfriend that had met up with somebody and couldn't wait for you. Anyway, so I made the break. It took me 3 nights to get out of camp because the military police were walking the fences with dogs. And I climbed the fence that was higher than this roof. And then upside barbed wire, I went over it, I ripped myself to pieces, and I managed to get out. And I hit the highway and through my brother's wife's friend that was in the camp. She had a special little stash of clothes for me. Civilian street clothes, we weren't allowed to have them. And I got on that main road at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I walked and I walked and I walked. And there's a hill outside Ladysmith, and I looked back at that camp in broad daylight with the moon, just like, oh. And I looked at the camp and this thing hit me, I just went, boy, you've done this. You have jumped fence. And I was ripped to bits. Oh, there's no cars. It was between Johannesburg and Durban. I was walking, and this car came on the road. This guy pulled over. This is crazy. Bulshouwens, Afrikaans, Dutch. Waar are jy gaan? And I said, Durban. And he said, get in. I got in and we took off. And Escort, the next town, wasn't far away. And we're going along and he goes, he's looking at me and he goes, so where have you been? And I said, Johannesburg. I've just been working up there. And he goes, oh, right, well, you don't mind if I stop in at the police station in Escort. And he goes, by the way, and he pulls out the bayonet on the end of a rifle, like the old Second World War bayonet. And he says, I just keep this here in case I pick up the wrong hitchhiker, all right? Yeah, it's okay. So we get there. And he's in the police station, seeing his friends. And I'm in the car, legs, the whole body's just going, should I make a run? And I'm thinking, if I make a run, then it's going to be obvious. So I thought, sitting out He came back after about an hour, pissed as I'd been drinking, drove me to 40 k's from home. Got home, I walked in the kitchen, my mum was in the kitchen, she just burst into tears because she knew what I'd done. And she said, you better not stay here, you better get on the move. And I had to take off to a place called the Transkei, an African independent state. And I was ducking and diving down there. I got hold of a friend from Wagga Wagga in New South Wales. He got hold of his uncle in Pretoria, which is the capital, and his uncle was in the Australian embassy, and he organised a quick ticket, a holiday ticket to come to Australia to supposedly go and see the family in Wagga. And that's what got me out of the country. There's so many other stories I could go in. The near escape at Jan Smuts Airport, Johannesburg, where I got pulled aside and I thought I was gone. And I made it to Australia, and I was the first case that the immigration of Australia had ever come across. So I ducked and dived waiting for amnesty, because back then, around about 4 years, they'd pull an amnesty where if you were on the run or whatever you'd done from another country, you were in here illegally, you could go and hand yourself in, and if your story was legitimate enough, they would work on granting you residence. So my case, when I finally gave up through this beautiful family, the Shepherd family, I stayed with in Wembley Downs for a while, I've got to give thanks to that family. When I left South Africa, none of my friends except two knew what I was doing. My girlfriend didn't know. She had some sort of a hint, and she didn't believe me. She was working for Botswana Airways at the time, and she was struck. And the guilt of leaving my family with military police, arriving here once a week, threatening my dad, wanting to search homes. I was on the run. I was in Esperance, and I was working on a farm, and I had an accident, a serious accident with my hand. I thought I'd lost my fingers. So I was in hospital with a finger that was in plaster, with these guys lying in plaster Paris, legs up in the air, all this stuff, and I'm there just with my hand bandaged up. And Amnesty International, I got hold of them, and they came in. And because at that time, most of the world was boycotting South Africa because of apartheid, Amnesty said to me, you've got a very good chance here. We are going to get you on a conscientious objecting grounds of you're against apartheid, you've been forced to fight against what you believe. They worked on my case, and thank you, Amnesty International. And they got me in as the first South African escapee refugee, because as far as immigration was concerned, they wanted to put me on the next flight. They didn't know how to handle my case, because they said if they let me in, it was going to open gates like that for every guy that was on AWOL, because there was so many guys that were deserting, jumping the fence. And what they said to us, they would form us up every morning in front of our bungalows, and they said to us, if you try and AWOL, you desert, you are turning your rifle against your own country. It's worse than murder. You'll end up in military jail forever. And so I knew, when I looked back at that camp that night on that moonlight night, I thought, my God, you've done this. You could land up in military jail for the rest of your life. And I knew some guys that had been there. You don't sit twiddling your thumbs looking at a war in that military jail. You pay for it. And that is your treatment, because you have turned your rifle in your own country, which is absolute sacrilege bullshit. This country is not just, it's giving me more than refuge. Look where I live. Look what I have. I brought my kids up here. That's our backyard. I taught my kids how to surf and fish. Just coming on to 20.
You're 19 years old.
My 21st in Perth, in Wembley, Downs, with none of my family, but a beautiful family, the Shepherd family. I was just a little kid. What we were trained to do, it was just insane. Even our body, all our actions we were taught between Muay Thai and in 6 seconds you take a man down that was 7 foot, put him to the ground. It was lethal. And I relate to the Vietnam vets very well. I get on very well with them because I know exactly what those guys went through. They were doing it in a different way. They were fighting the Viet Cong for reasons they didn't even know. They were young American, Australian boys, just like us. I feel for those guys in Vietnam because it would have been absolutely fucking shocking. Yeah, it's a story that is not only the music as is what I want to get through, it's the story of there's so many South African guys now that are living in New Zealand, West Australia, all over Australia, but mainly West Australia, that they'll know exactly what I'm talking about, especially guys my age now. Yeah, that's my story.